Hello and welcome to the Film Freaks podcast. Film Freaks with a Z, of course. This is the podcast about movies. We talk about a single movie in each episode, and we'll get to this episode's movie in a little bit. Of course, I always got to ask y'all, the audience, to suggest movies for us for the podcast. Every 5 episodes. Every 5 episodes, there is a fan vote that we will be doing in the Discord from now on. So if you want to continue doing that, you either got to join the Discord or have an inside source vote for you. Of course, we're always looking for new movies. So if you want to suggest a new movie, just go ahead and jump on to the YouTube video and leave a comment with your recommendation. Or you can actually join the Discord and you can talk in the movie stuff section to suggest a movie as well. Or we always have our email that no one uses, ff.filmfreaks with a Z at the end at gmail.com if you want to suggest movies there. It's dealer's choice, really. Well, I guess it's not dealer. It's player's choice, really. Or you can join the podcast like a certain someone today, and you can recommend a movie while you're talking to us, and they'll be added to the list. Let's go ahead and introduce ourselves before we introduce the movie. I am Yemmy the Ferret, and I'm here with...
Sex Farm Waffles.
Hey, Mation.
Great positivity.
And our special guest, a friend of mine, Topos.
Am I the only one making up names now?
I sincerely thought that was over since Callus left.
Oh. Well,
and you just started doing it last episode again, so I was
Keep
a bit
doing
confused.
it. I like it.
Yeah, if you want to keep doing it,
Brings
that's fine.
flavor.
Yeah.
This was a wild one.
Yeah.
anyways, Topos. Hello.
Hi,
welcome.
Topos. Welcome.
Hello.
Welcome back, I should say.
Thank you very much. This is Spinal Tap. We watched the movie This is Spinal Tap, which makes it so that this is Spinal Tap episode.
This is
Film
Film
Freaks.
Freaks.
This with the Z.
Yeah.
Yep. And Spinal Tap with an umlaut.
As
So
a lot of bands do back in the day, like Motorhead, and
Yeah.
that's the only one that came to mind. Motley Crue. Yeah.
Yeah, Motley Crue did.
DC.
Well, they had the lightning bolt, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, Spinal Tap was a documentary made in 1982 by filmmaker Marty DeBurgi, promoting a kind of underground, like British rock band or UK rock band called Spinal Tap for their United States concert tour, promoting their new album "Smell the Glove." I don't know if Film Freaks generally does documentaries, but I guess this time we decided to. So, and I'm here for it. The documentary is. Go ahead.
No, the board is open for documentaries. We never denied one, I guess I would say.
Yeah.
Isn't this technically a mockumentary?
Yeah, it's a mockumentary.
Yeah.
We'll get into it.
What?
Let...
Huh? Wait, what?
That's fine. Tell us.
What's the difference? What's the difference?
One's fake, one's
Whoa.
pretends to be real.
Is this
Wait.
a revelation to Topos?
I'm about to say,
Yeah.
are we about to fight?
This is a bit for Topos, don't worry.
You guys are saying that Spinal Tap wasn't a
No.
band?
Well,
I'm
I mean,
confused. Wait, hang
because
on.
of
I
this
gotta Google
movie,
something really
it
quick.
kind of became a band.
Because of this movie, they released
released an
another
album.
They released an album, and then they released another album like 15 years later that no one cared
Now,
about because they didn't
see-
make a movie about it.
If that is true, that feels a little bit like somebody watching Fight Club and then thinking to themselves, "I should make a Fight Club."
Yes.
Yeah.
That is absolutely. That's completely absurd. Why would you hear like the song "Sex Farm" and go, "You know what? This actually is kind of a banger."
Well, I
And
will
it was a
say,
banger.
I will say some of the songs actually were kind of catchy. I mean, of course, there were some in there
Yeah.
that were like, whatever, but
They were clearly joke songs to show the absurdity of the band.
right.
Yeah.
Yes, and then there were some songs that were absolutely heinous.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
deeply deep. In fact, almost every single one of them had some problems. We'll get into it, I suppose. But over the course of this documentary, or as I'm now learning, mockumentary, which was apparently directed by Rob Reiner, making Marty DeBurgi a liar. The over the course of this tour, the band is slowly like circling the drain in terms of audience turnout and like general public interest. They're struggling to get their album actually on shelves because the album cover is incredibly offensive.
Wow.
Which
Such
you
a
know,
synopsis. We don't need it beat by beat yet.
Oh, I see. Well,
hey,
that is
let
kind
him
of
cook,
the-
Tay. Let him cook.
I'm just saying, it's like at this point, he's just going to say everything, and then we're like, well, that was the movie.
It's okay.
Get out of my kitchen.
No, you're a terrible cook.
Well, we have seen hot takes on your YouTube
anyway.
channel.
It's true. No, he's not actually. He's
The fruit.
not a terrible cook. He's pretty good. So.
The fruit punch and fruity pebbles is not something I would recommend.
No.
Ew.
Yeah. So gross.
I was gonna put that on my menu at my restaurant.
Highly recommend against it.
Yeah, unless you would like to wind up like Spinal Tap, who I guess they did have a happy ending though, so we'll get to it. But that is this movie. It is a mockumentary about a just absolutely kind of lampooning the late 70s, early 80s rock scene, and kind of hanging a hat on what was wrong with it, as well as, I guess we'll get into it later, but completely undercutting itself in almost every, like, in an incredibly artistic way. At every point they try and make, they somehow manage to just, like, shoot themselves in both feet and then crawl along the ground to get another gun so they can do it some more.
Yeah.
Analogy. Who stars in this?
This is starring, I mean, I could keep going with the bit, I suppose. It's Nigel on lead guitar. Ian is the band manager. No, there's a bunch of stars. Christopher Guest is in it. Michael McKean, Harry Shearer, Rob Reiner is actually in it. June Chadwick, Tony Hendra, Bruno Kirby. I'm reading a list of folks. I don't know most of these names, which I could have sworn that Ben Stiller was in it.
Did you say Fran
But-
Drescher?
Yeah, Fran Drescher's in it.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's.
Oh,
in
really?
there. Oh yeah, she was.
Yeah.
She was the one who initially was like,
Oh,
the
she's the
cover's terrible. It's sexist.
Yeah.
She's got a great New Jersey accent. just like lays it on thick. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then she went on to help
Fran
actors.
Drescher. Yes. Yeah. She did. It's the head of the SAG-AFTRA union. It's pretty great. So where do we want to start?
Yeah, where do we
What
start?
do you want us? Yeah,
Yeah.
where do you want us to start?
The implication, like the underlying idea of this episode was that this was a suggestion from me, which is true only in the most technical of senses. There was a spate of musical episodes on Film Freakz earlier this year, and I mentioned this to Tay. I think it was outside of the.
No, it was on the show.
The podcast.
It was on the show.
It was on the show. It was on the show. Okay, well, foot in my mouth, I suppose. I'd never seen this movie. I hadn't seen this movie until last night, and I guess the best place, if I am to start it, I kind of want to start with the album cover, because it frankly kind of highlights like one of the biggest things about this movie, which is that like it's an album cover that could only be made by bad people who are also dumb, and yet the movie itself has this conceit that they are, like, in some ways genuinely talented. So,
To counter
Go ahead.
that though, like the entire first half of the movie, they're getting shit on by critics. Like that's the whole part is like, oh, you know, this review is only 2 words, more, shit sandwich, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like I feel like the band, they're kind of parodying the Beatles a little bit with this band because they kind of start with like the that pop rock that the Beatles used to do, you want to hold my hand or whatever, and then they slowly transform into like a more hippie scene. And then even the Beatles got a bit heavier with like the White Album and stuff like that. Obviously, this is more so like, oh, what if the Beatles, turned into AC/DC or something like that, obviously. But it kind of goes along that same story arc of like, oh, we started as like this go-lucky, happy, young group of kids playing music and touring the world. And then, somewhere along the way, they got drugged up and and then eventually turned into sex fiends or whatever. But I would say like the most of the like that whole section with the criticism kind of shows like, yeah, they're already sort of on their way out, maybe even possibly being kicked out of the UK.
That's why they're in America.
Hey, but I would listen to Shark Sandwich. That's a pretty good album cover. I like that one.
yeah, their albums are jokes naturally, but they are kind of all over the place in terms of jokiness. I guess you're right that they do exhibit an arc of some kind, in terms of like what they were originally and then what they sort of turned into. I don't know if I would say that they were. I think that it's possible that the Beatles were being referenced, and certainly, a mockumentary about a band out of the UK, the Beatles are definitely going to come up, and they do. But I thought I'm too young for this movie, and that's saying something. There's so many references in here that I'm like, I can tell that's a reference. I don't get it even a little bit, But like, I think that there were literally just 100 hair metal bands that dipped into punk that had the hippie kind of like era, and as you go back, you can see exactly this arc from like, pick a band that never broke the top spot but was in the top 10 3 or 4 times in the UK. Like in 1980, you'll find 6 or 7 Spinal Taps. I don't know if the Beatles was one of them, but I definitely see what you're getting at.
For sure. I mean, this is very typical of. I mean, I know this wasn't directed by him. It's his name, Guest. Last name's Guest. He went on. Christopher Guest. Thank you. He went on, and a lot of the same actors went on, and made a bunch of mockumentary movies like Best in Show, Waiting for Guffman, and those type of shows.
Yes.
And it's very similar, type character development, I guess, kind of, where it's just like it's people just getting in their own way, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And even with those movies, the other documentaries, some of them work really well, some of them don't work as well.
I am a huge fan of Best in Show and Waiting for Guffman.
Yeah, both of those are good.
Love those movies so much.
Mighty Wind is
Oh my
pretty
gosh.
good. But yeah, there's a few like none of them are bad, but some of them are not as good as others. And
I agree.
I thought maybe that there would be a lot in this movie for you in particular, Tay, because you're
I'm the oldest.
you majored in film. Yes, that's exactly what I was getting at. But you majored in film and film theory, and it feels like that like part of this mockumentary was making fun of some of the film stuff at the time. Ray, I don't know if you have a similar background, but it seems like you were picking up on that as well.
Oh, she's just good.
The only super background that I have, I guess, like with this type of movie is just Waiting for Guffman and Best in Show.
Waiting for Guffman is the best one.
You think so? See, I think Best in Show is freaking hilarious. Oh my gosh. I love those movies so much. I love the awkward tension. I
Yeah.
love like
That's it. They are
Mm.
very awkward, and
yes.
this movie obviously, this was the first one, but it wasn't directed by a guest, but he was in it.
Guest was also in the other ones too.
Yeah, no, guest is in
Yeah.
all of them. Like I said, most of these actors come back in in those movies.
Yeah.
Um,
You didn't say that.
So
Not by
that's all right.
So what I kind of mean about poking fun at the idea of filmmaking and documentary in particular in general is how this movie starts with Martin DeBurgi like barreling the camera with a Marine Corps hat on, or sorry, it was a Navy hat,
Navy.
USS.
Yeah.
Yeah. Saying that he had, oh, you might know me from that one commercial with the dog.
Yeah, I will say
And
the
just
other.
kind of-
Yeah, the other movies don't have that. Like the film, it's more like the Office. The film crew's there. Everyone knows they're there, but they're just kind of
Yeah.
blank faces kind of thing. This one definitely delved into the I'm the filmmaker,
Yeah.
Well, it
which I
sets the
thought was
filmmaker up to
weird.
be incompetent. So you already have an unreliable lens pointed at these unreliable narrators, and the whole thing, like the whole edifice. The point I think or one of the points, it's hard to get to it, but it feels very much like the movie's trying to say, "Hey, you all, as an audience, you know the truth that of that this stuff is absurd and ridiculous, but the filmmaker doesn't understand the truth, and the people who are in the movie absolutely can't see the truth." And I thought that was interesting. Again, like everything else, it got undercut pretty heavily in the middle-ish bits, which again we can get into. But like starting out with the filmmaker himself barreling the camera and saying, "Here's what I wanted to do and why I wanted to do it," and very clearly lying through his teeth is very funny.
Well, it starts
funny
off the movie on an authentic note. Like, oh, here's, you go and watch movies nowadays, and there's not too many directors who get in front of the camera before the movie and go, thank you for watching. This is my movie, and this is what I want you to get out of it, right? I think that, with it being that documentary style, I think that it almost perfectly tries to set the tone as, like, we're doing this as authentic as we can, while also being really uncanny and crazy and off the cuff and improv. And in my opinion, I think it does a really good job at that. I think that throughout most of the movie, if not all of it, maybe I would say most of it, keeps up that facade and keeps you like going like, oh, I could totally see this as like a real band, a real documentary being made about a washed up group of people who are just sludging their way through the U.S.
Yeah.
Yeah. They did a really good job with that.
Yeah, and it's obvious, the director said he was a fan, that like they changed his life back when he first saw them in this or whatever. So, they set it up as like, yeah, he's a fan, and you watching this probably won't be. Not that they relate that. You just go, oh, okay, yeah, these guys must be good. And then like they had those fan like clips where they're like, oh, it's so loud and all these other things, and like when they actually play, I'm like, this seems like, I guess that's the joke, is like they turned it up to 11, but it's still just a 10.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I mean the
That
whole
was one of my
movie is
favorite
is
parts.
kind of like it's kind of like that, where it's like the joke is they think that they're doing something. Like there's this whole section with like the lead guitar, not Nigel, David,
Yes.
the other guitarist, like saying like how he was inspired by Bach and Beethoven, and then he puts it through his solos. Like that's how he shows himself. And like they cut to him doing a solo with almost nothing else musically going on, and it just sounds bad. Like,
Yeah.
and I think that the whole movie is just it just kind of is like that, where it's like they think they're doing something really cool, like with the Stonehenge gag, and it turns out to just be a flop, and it's just like kind of like a flop after flop after flop, and it's very amusing, and I was smiling and laughing all the way through with the gags that were going on. But I do like that how they keep doing that throughout the entire movie. Like they set something up and you go, okay, how are they gonna fuck this up? And it's usually a pretty humorous way that it gets fucked up.
But
Them
before
coming
you
out of
can
those
even
like weird pods. That was
Yeah,
That
that's
was
actually
great.
that's a scene that stuck with. Like I saw this movie when I was a very young kid. My dad put it on, and that is one scene that stuck with me since then. Like the bass player trying to get out of the pod, and then he finally does get out of the pod, and he has to try and go back in. And
yeah. So I watched it years ago as well. Like, I mean, 15 years ago at least. And the scene that stuck out to me was the was the like turn it up to 11. Like that whole debacle. I
Yeah.
don't know why, but I thought that part was hilarious. Top tier.
why not just make 9? No, wait, what was it? Like, why not just make
Why
10
Why not
louder?
just make 10 louder? Yeah. It goes to 11.
Yeah.
Well,
Greedy,
at
did you you had
right
something
at
to
the
say?
start-
I forget what I was gonna say.
No. Okay.
right
So
at the-
yeah, I had never seen this movie, but going in, basically, that was the only bit I knew. Everyone always quotes up it, like, "Oh, turn it up to 11."
But like the funny thing is like that's not even the most memorable part for me personally. Like I think that there's so many other parts of this movie that you could go, "Oh, that's the scene that everyone should be talking about. Or that's the scene that
Yeah.
everyone should be quoting," because like just going back to like that first part where the critiques are being told to them like to their face. It's just like so many good lines in there, especially when they start talking about like the different drummers they've had. Like it's a running gag. The drummers are all dying in mysterious ways.
Yeah.
And one of my
Yes.
favorite lines is they're like, the police said not to look into it because it's too strange or whatever. And it's just like, why aren't we talking about like everything else that happens in the movie? Like going into 11 is a great scene and I love that, but there's other scenes that I feel like are way more funny or way better put together
Yeah.
in terms of like
Like,
being super memorable.
Yeah. I was thinking, especially watching it, like the 11 scenes, like, okay, yeah, I guess I see why, I guess that's made, everyone knows that scene. But yeah, I felt like it's like that's basically it. Like, yeah, I like the drummer thing. And I don't know if
the
it was-
payoff for
the-
I thought the Chekhov's drummer was such a letdown.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like they just blow him up 5 minutes before the movie ends and replace him when they go to Japan, and it's like, like throughout the entire movie, I was like, oh, how are they killing the drummer and why are they killing the drummer over and over again? Because it was like insinuated that they were murdering their drummer for some reason, and there was nothing there. It was a kind of funny joke, I guess, but it was kind of a letdown for me. I was like,
Yeah.
hang on, you've been referencing this the whole movie, and you
Yeah.
just do a
Well, the way they blew him up, like, it looked for a second, it looked like they did the same thing to the drummer in Japan, but then he was there. It was just stage effects, and he was still there.
Well, they hard cut from when the drummer blew up in America
Yeah.
to the new drummer in Japan, who is also presumably going to blow up at the end of the tour. It was a little bit confusing. I want to ask you all a question. I'm curious about the answer. Was Spinal Tap a good band?
No.
No.
No, not really. Funny, but no. not
Good intentions maybe in some parts, but
Here comes Yemmy. I love them.
yeah.
So
He's
No,
quiet.
I,
so
no,
that
I mean I wouldn't say
Yeah.
that I love them. I've already said that musically it's not really like the band really isn't that great, like not only with like the soloing and stuff like that, but I mean in general I just I I don't want to like just kind of like with Kung Pao, like I don't want to try and look at this so seriously that I'm like nitpicking, like, oh, this was out of tune or what, because it's like it's kind of supposed to be like that,
Oh,
like
sure.
yeah.
Sure.
kind of like how Kung Pao, like the over the top sound effects and stuff like that. It's like it's parodying the time. It's doing it in such a way that's like funny because it's like so loud. And in this movie, in this documentary, in this mockumentary, it's kind of the same vibe where it's like, can I really take such a critical eye that I'm going into this and going, oh well, that was offbeat, or something like that.
No. So let me try and reframe the question a little bit, because I think the context is important. I agree with y'all about the quality of the music. I don't have the ear to judge, but I do I thought that this movie was a little bit all over the place in terms of whether or not the movie itself thought Spinal Tap was a good band, because you don't get 40 years and 15 albums, as well as like a bunch of tours, as well as some of the like underlying musical clear musical ability that was on display, like when Nigel's playing the piano, which is wound up with an adorable joke about "lick my love pump." Like all of that does seem to indicate that there is real genuine talent in the band itself, that something creative and interesting is happening. And yet, like, the impression that everybody that you're left with throughout the movie and kind of at the end is that they aren't a good band. But that kind of flies in the face of this idea that like even dimwits can make something beautiful and creative, and these people are talented enough to have a long career in rock and roll across multiple decades.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, there are some really good songs during this movie, but they're not all great, and they're not all performed well, and they're not all, we're seeing the band live. Like who knows how the album sounds? How those 40 albums sounds. And also, I think it's good to remember too, like 40 years, like they've changed genres 3 or 4 times, however many times, and they're obviously on tour, like trying new things, like with the Stonehenge song and stuff like that. So I think that we're looking at a band that is both emotionally spent and creatively spent at the same time, and that's kind of what's causing some tension between all the members. Well, I guess just the 2 guitarists at the end, but then once they get that shock at the end where it's like, oh, you're charting in Japan, they're like, oh shit, it's working again, and then they go full blast into it again.
Yeah, I got the feeling like that was kind of the point. Like, yes, this was a band, that is talented and did all these things, but they've just been away for so long, and they've been surrounded probably by yes men, like the girlfriend and stuff, and I think that was a play on the Beatles with Yoko Ono, where they're just like, oh, look, the girlfriend ruining the band again.
So the thing that I'm trying to point out is that there's a cognitive dissonance in the concept of the documentary itself, where it wants to have it both ways. It wants to have this band with a long career that have presumably had a golden age, which I don't think is really borne out in the text. I think that like their critics were always right about them and they were always shit, and yet they have made money and survived and lived that rock and roll lifestyle. But also they're bad musicians and bad people and not good at their jobs. Like, it wants to have it both ways, and I don't understand how. I don't get, like...
Let me front this to you real quick. Nickelback. Okay. Do you think that Nickelback is a talented band? Do you think do they make good music? A lot of people would disagree.
Those are 2 different questions. Those are 2 completely different questions.
No, it's the same thing. I mean, we have a real world example here, where Nickelback, are they good musicians? Sure, they're good magicians. I want
to see their magic act now.
But do they make good music? I mean, personally, I haven't really liked their music through most of my life, right? But there is a core audience for Nickelback. So when you're saying that, like, oh, how are they this big? How do they get this big? It's because every band, if they had a golden era, they're going to have those lingering fans. And also the context is that they left Europe, and a lot of bands strive. They hit their golden age in Europe. You know, you got like Chumbawamba with Tub Thumping. Like they were a huge band in Europe, but in America they only had a one-hit wonder. Okay, so I also take that into context, because like they come over from Europe into the USA, and like, you know, the us in the USA are like, well, who really cares? Like most people are gonna be like, who really cares about Spinal Tap, except for their core fans who have been there since like that golden age. And I also would like to say that at the beginning, when they're talking about the criticisms for the albums, the like 2 or 3 album pictures that they show are from this new era of them, where they're doing like the more rock, sexy kind of stuff, right? So we don't actually know how their old stuff was received. It seems like a lot of people love their old stuff, like the pop rock era and the hippie stuff era. So, you know, as those people grew up, that, you know, they probably just grew up with the band and they kept with the band. But a lot of people probably who are listening to them for the first time are like, well, this sucks. Why would I listen to this? You know, they see the album on the shelves and they're like, well, who's Spinal Tap? Why do I give a fuck about Spinal Tap, right? So I know I just said a lot there, but I think it's all valid.
Okay, all right. I can see. So Spinal Tap in the universe of This Is Spinal Tap is a good band to a very select demographic of people, which is actually referenced again in the movie itself. They kind of some of the more interesting jokes that I thought were there were about like, oh, you don't find yourself appeal, like all one of the criticisms that you faced is that all of your fans are white and all of your fans are men. And both of those jokes I thought were pretty spot on, because they were like, well, yeah, but she shouldn't be. We're not trying to say that she should be made to smell the glove. I mean, she should be made to smell the glove, obviously. That's without question. But it's not sexist. I thought that was a really well put together kind of like response to the question. Like, oh, of course, women don't like them. They're very, very sexist. That being said, the movie itself was pretty freaking sexist. So that was like,
very.
Again, that dissonance is there. But I hear what you're saying about like, okay, in this universe, they are a good band to a certain demographic of people, and that's where their success comes from. I suppose that answers a
Well, I think
frustration that I
the
have
whole
with it.
sexist angle is a separate issue that I don't feel like needed to be put into the context of what we were just talking about, because that is an entirely different part of this movie, is how the documentary portrays the different things going on at the time, where you know, women were not as they were not as I guess empowered is probably the wrong word, but not as empowered as they are nowadays. And but the thing is, like, it's hard to explain, but I do feel like it's a separate conversation that we should have after the current one that we were having.
Well, I don't know. I think we all agree in the context of the movie, they were a good band. They had a cult following, just like the movie has a cult following.
Yeah, sure does. And
And-
definitely looking at the reviews, you can tell.
Yeah. And basically, I feel like, I mean, we've seen it, you know, other bands, just again, you know, you referenced some, you know, real world bands, but not even just Nickelback, but like how many people have followed, you know, like the band since you were a kid, and then as they, you know, get older, they try different things, experiment and stuff, and you're like, this isn't as good as it used to be. And I feel like that was kind of this, is, you know, they were trying new things and stuff, and even their longtime fans were just like, this isn't as good as it used to be. And that's why you see no one showing up to their concerts, kids getting canceled. But as for the sexist thing, yeah, I think that was kind of the point, is, you know, these guys came from the era where being sexist was fine, and now they came back in the 80s, and people were trying to be like, no, you can't be sexist, and but we want to be. And that's very indicative of most people who still to this day were like, well, no, I want to be sexist. I'm right, you're wrong. You're like, no, you're not. I think that was like intentional. Like, these guys, yes, were sexist, and they still were, even though, you know, society was telling them they can't be.
One of the one of the weird things about it, about the movie itself, is that it did kind of hang a hat on how they were sexist. But the two major villains in the movie are both women. One who's like, no, your album cover is too sexist to put on store shelves, and the other who is like, I'm going to be the band manager, and she winds up splitting up the band and passes out astrology charts. And it's like, this movie doesn't have a great view of women. There's like a really short clip of a very, very intoxicated woman right at the start of the movie as well. And it's like, that it was just an interesting choice that the movie itself is like, no, sexism is bad and has no place in today's world of 1984. And yet itself is not great at showing a an in-depth and nuanced view of the gender dynamics of the 80s rock world.
You also have to remember this was in 1984, so no, the world still didn't have a great view of women. It was still very, very sexist. Yeah. So they're probably trying to get that point across, but also, they still had to be sexist because reasons. So that's how I took it. Like, yeah, don't make fun of women. Don't patronize them. They're not there to be your toy. And then, hey, look, we're still toys. Yeah. But
definitely. And like I said, the whole girlfriend being the manager, that was a commentary or joke on the Beatles' expense, who were split up by Yoko Ono,
right?
John's girlfriend, who did basically the kind of same thing.
Yeah, that's what I mean, and that's what I got from that too. So like, as a woman, that wasn't very
that might have been
at all.
Yeah, that might have been a little thing that was above Topos's age. One of those age.
Yeah, no, hey, I sailed above me. That's for sure.
Obviously I don't have the same life as other people. I found the astrology thing to be pretty funny, especially like in the context of nowadays where people take astrology so seriously. And I thought that was more of like a funny joke rather than like, oh, look at this silly woman handing out astrology cards. But that might just be me.
No, I don't think you're wrong. I think it's also like if this movie were made today, it would be a lot of like the basic white bitches. Like, let's be real. Like that girl would have had Starbucks in her hand, a Taylor Swift quote on her shirt.
The Swifties are coming.
Yeah, like
this movie would have been canceled before it even finished.
1000%, absolutely. But if we were to try to take it into this time, like, yeah, those would be the basic white bitch groupies.
Yeah, I don't know if this movie would have been canceled before it was even started. I mean, especially with the mockumentary angle, they can get away with a lot more. And I think that what this movie does, like, real documentaries show a lot worse and show more context and more of everything, and those obviously come out every day. So I do feel like this movie could be made. Obviously, it would need to be tweaked a little bit, but it could be made nowadays and probably be well received.
Yeah. Documentaries are more extreme towards one thing. And these mockumentaries are just kind of awkward. They're like, yeah, let's just film everyday life. And it's the most awkward lives you've ever seen.
Yeah.
I also feel like documentaries a lot of times have like a specific message that they want to say and they want to portray things in a certain way. And I feel like mockumentaries kind of kick the ball around. Like, they don't just focus on like one aspect of, especially this movie does not focus on one thing that's wrong with the industry. It focuses on like everything, right? And when you're watching like a documentary about like, I don't know, pollution, like a lot of times they'll focus on like, well, here's why, and it's the plastic in the water, which is like, okay, valid. Mm-hmm. But what else is going on? Like we need like put more like why, put everything into it. And I
Yeah.
think that that's what this movie does pretty well. Is like we have everything here for you to see, whether it's as in depth as we want it to be. That's up to the viewer. But
Right.
I think it does a good job of like making sure that every angle kind of gets hit.
That's interesting. I thought it was supposed to be a bad documentary. Like most mockumentaries, like the documentary form itself is being made fun of, and therefore it's supposed to be bad, right? It's supposed to feel unfocused or kind of like off the cuff, or like the the editing is choppy and the themes are hard to draw out. And I'm part of that was intentional choice. I think that maybe some of that was just because the genre itself was fairly new, and some of the mockumentary, what are they called? Like conventions hadn't been solidified yet. But it's interesting to me that you feel like documentaries would be better if they were more like This Is Spinal Tap. I guess I can see that this, more. We talked about authenticity at the beginning, and I guess that is something that This Is Spinal Tap seems to value a lot, is the idea of artistic integrity and authenticity. Although, are Nigel and David authentic?
Well, much like any celebrity in front of a camera, like, are they really going to show their true selves? I mean, how many celebrities have been put behind bars or canceled into the ground because of something they did off camera? Like they're not going to, like, if they truly hate like women or African Americans, they're not going to go on camera and be like, yeah, fuck women. Like I think
Here first, Yemmy's views on women.
I think how they portray themselves on camera is exactly how they want to be portrayed. They want to make you, the audience member, maybe not you personally, but the audience member, go, oh, these guys are really talented. They have such a rich history. They're trying to portray them well, which is of course a part of that mockumentary where it's like, okay, they're being like exaggerated versions of what someone would be like in the same situation in a real documentary.
And the problem is that Nigel and David are idiots, and so the thing that comes across to the audience is not, oh, these are really cool, talented people. It's that in spite of everything, Marty DeBurgi cannot make these shitheads likable. Yeah. He can't make them seem smart or talented or good at anything, and like they're trying so hard when they're like trying to cry at the grave of Elvis or whatever. And they can't quite get the tune right. That was sort of, to me, that was part of the joke, was that like these two are just, they're bad people no matter how hard their PR team works to make them seem less bad.
Well, I feel like the whole movie is a part of the joke. It's hard to like point out one scene and be like, well, that's a part. Like I think the whole movie is kind of a part of the joke, right? And I mean, talk about iconic scenes. I mean, why don't people talk about them trying to remember the lyrics to an Elvis song at his grave? Like that's iconic. Like
Yeah.
that had me literally like laughing out loud. Like that was so great.
I love how they had the worst rhythm in the world. They could not get on beat. They could not harmonize together,
Yeah.
and it was that alone was beautiful.
And that's
Personally.
pretty early on, and I mean that is another
Yeah.
scene that kind of sets the tone, where it's like, okay, are these guys really as talented as the documentary's trying to make them look, or did they really deserve to, tour America or whatever? I think. I guess any band could technically push the funds out to tour America, but still, did they deserve to be as big as they did? Do they deserve to get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Were they in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? I can't remember.
Spinal Tap? No, I don't think so.
Y'all should know you were just there.
Well, I can tell you
Yeah,
for
that's
sure that the
true.
real Spinal Tap wasn't in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I don't know about this movie. I think it would have been funny if they mentioned like, yeah, we were inducted, in like 1980 or whatever. I think that would have been kind of a funny thing, but it might have caused more outrage. Yeah, well, yeah, I think that would have been funny too. Like if they went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame like induction ceremony, like, and I guess the budget wasn't big enough for something like that, but I could totally see like Spinal Tap showing up and like walking on stage kind of like Kanye West and being like, you know, instead of AC/DC getting the award, they get the award or something like that, you know.
I'm gonna let you finish. But this band right here.
Fat Bottoms is the best song of all time.
That would have been great.
Fat
We should have written
Bottoms
this
was-
movie.
Fat Bottoms was Queen, actually. Theirs was Big Bottom.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
Yeah. So the movie, the entire movie being part of the joke, like, I think that you're right, but I do the whole thing is couched in like a bunch of layers of irony. It did feel like there was a message in there, though. At least sometimes it felt like the movie was trying to say something beyond just like making a bunch of jokes about rock and roll, you know?
Oh, I know what it was. The whole point of
Oh.
the movie was to tell you how dangerous drumming is.
Yeah. Watch out, Greedy.
Yes.
I also drum.
Oh, watch out, Tay.
Yeah.
Should I drum a little bit too?
Watch out, Yemmy.
Never touched a drum set in my life.
You're safe.
Drums don't play hymns, my dad said.
Uh,
Well,
That got dark.
Get an electric drum set and it might be able to do some hymns.
Yeah.
All right, so the snare drum is
Maybe.
and the symbol is Lord, and the first tom
That's all you
is
need, really.
the-
That's most hymns. Yep.
Well, we
Lord
actually
and
all
Lord
okay.
and Lord and the.
So the three toms are the whole, you know, the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, right? And
Yeah.
then the snare drum is like and. So you got like Father and drum. It works.
It does.
Treat
Oh my
Crash is
gosh.
holy.
mhm.
I sworn the three toms were Hiddleston, Eccleston, and I can't think of a third Tom.
Tom from Tom
Holland?
and Jerry.
Tom- yeah, Tom
Eccleston
Holland.
isn't Tom. Is it?
Yeah, Tom
Holland?
Holland.
Okay, all right, there we go. Yeah,
The three MCU Toms.
Eccleston isn't Tom. Dang it! This whole joke didn't work.
Tom Hiddleston. Tom
Uh,
Holland. Tom.
Tom Armstrong. Tom Lewis Armstrong?
Yeah.
Tom Hardy.
Tom Hardy.
there we
Venom.
go.
Venom. There we go. We got there. We got there in the end.
We did it.
Now, Yemmy, if you could just edit out all of the parts where we were stumbling over three Toms.
I'm actually going to make your vocals louder during that section.
No. I want to read some of the lyrics to if that's all right, just because
The one song
some
you,
of them are
you know.
no, this is the one that made me go, oh man, I don't know if, like, I think that they are currently, at least in this day and age, they are drowning out what they are trying to say with exactly how horrible these people are. So this is Tonight I'm Gonna Rock You Tonight, which, banger title, right? But this is the second verse. You're sweet, but you're just 4 feet and you still got your baby teeth. You're too young and I'm too well hung, but tonight I'm gonna rock you. Tonight I'm gonna rock you. Yeah, tonight I'm gonna rock you.
In itself,
Yeah,
that
that-
is a parody of
Ew.
like there's that one song that's like she's only 17, like that inherently is like a terrible song, right? I feel
Yeah.
like
I
they're-
think
feel like
it
they're
goes
just
beyond that. I think like Led Zeppelin kidnapped a 16-year-old, like actually kidnapped a 16-year-old and like drove her around the country while her parents were trying to like catch up to the tour bus to get her back. Like,
yeah,
it
you
was-
hear about that stuff too, like nowadays as well, like with Ezra Miller,
Mhm.
who
Yep. Oh God.
yeah, we don't need to get into that, but
Please
yeah,
don't.
we definitely still hear about that kind of stuff, and back then I'm sure it was even worse because there's like so much stuff that we don't know about that was happening, and
Yeah.
obviously you hear stories about it nowadays, just like from secondhand and like people who were maybe there who, you know, years and years and years after the events happen.
But that's kind of, I mean, that comes back to some of the like just the tonal whiplash that this movie gave me sometimes, where it was like, are you, it's like sometimes it's trying to glorify the rock and roll lifestyle. Sometimes it's saying it's not that great. Sometimes like, oh, these are talented people going through the worst year of their lives, and sometimes it's like these people are the worst people you've ever seen. And it wasn't that they didn't. It was either one or the other. There wasn't like ever a great middle path that I saw that explored the nuance of these people. It was like a lot of times it felt like this. It couldn't decide what it was trying to say about it, and it was sort of frustrating to me.
Well, I do want to ask.
Is bad.
I don't remember that line being in the movie. Like, was that one actually sung in the movie, or is that just like from the album?
I'm pretty sure that one was in the movie. There were a couple of songs that were done in their entirety. This one, Tonight I'm Gonna Rock You Tonight, I know that at least the first verse was sung, and I'm pretty sure you got the second verse too. I don't think that you got the... No, I recognize... So the third verse is, you're hot, you take all we got, not a dry seat in the house. I remember Not a Dry Seat in the House because I chuckled at it, but I didn't clock the second verse very, very much because, some of it was hard to hear.
Yeah, I
It might not have been in the movie, though.
It's possible that they like cut away from it and it was like kind of in the background.
Yeah.
That's probably why I'm a
Yep.
little confused right now. But I mean,
There's also...
I've listened to the album and like obviously listening in passing without thinking about it. It's like, okay, it's Spinal Tap, whatever. But yeah, I don't know what else to say.
Oh, no, I mean, hey, you're right. Like, it was also, I mean, to be fair, it was a different time, and they were absolutely like highlighting that as wrong or incorrect. But tonally, it was a wild ride sometimes in that movie, where sometimes it was like 1 second it was saying one thing and 1 second it was saying the other. At least that was part of what I got.
I don't know. I feel like that's kind of like the point, is just like, highlighting those type of things, and just showing how like normal it was for that time period, and for the rock scene. You have
That time, but you can turn on the radio, hit an oldies station, and hear that kind of shit.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Which sort of frustrates me, but
yeah, and that's, I think, what there's, that's what the lyrics, they wrote the lyrics as a joke, or a commentary on songs that are like that in real life. To be like, yeah, there are rock songs that talk about teenage girls and
like,
hey, look, also.
If there wasn't a movie associated with this album, I definitely would look at it in a different way. And you can kind of get that from their latest release, which was in like 2000 something. They did like a Spinal Tap Returns or Spinal Tap Rises from the Dead. And like the album, one, it's not memorable because there's not a movie associated with it. But two, like, why? Like, another thing is like, why would I care about this? Because like, Spinal Tap is like a joke band. And three, I'm not like, if you listen to the lyrics, it's like, it doesn't sound like a parody. It sounds like they're trying to be serious. And I think that takes away a lot from this Black album, this Smell My Finger album,
Smell my glove.
Smell the glove. Yeah. Yeah.
What does that even mean?
Well, I think the joke is that prostate exam smell the glove, because like when they were describing the album cover, like the guy has like a glove on and she's bent over, naked.
Yeah.
I like the idea of a entirely black album. Like instead of trying to like reason and or tweak it, they just went, what, fuck this, the black album.
Well, Ian made that choice without telling them.
He really liked the White Album,
Yeah.
Thought that was classic, and so Ian's creativity comes down to just copying other. Yeah. It felt like the cricket bat was a reference of some kind, and I couldn't get that either.
I think it's also a good point. Like, I think it's a good point that he brings up. Like, you know, the Beatles did an entirely white album, like there's a white cover, like, and that sold millions, and it still sells millions, or like it's streaming now, so it's like listened to millions of times. I think the point is like, hey, you're a big enough band that you should be able to push a entirely black cover album out there. You don't need to have the craziness on it, which might have been wrong because, you know, the album sold like shit. So
It was also derivative, right? Like you can't just take what another popular band did and do the same thing only with a black cover instead of a white one, right? Like that's not there's nothing there. Like the Beatles already did it. Now you're just copying the Beatles.
well, it's funny too. They mentioned the Monkees in this movie, and Spinal Tap is literally like the Monkees of the hard rock scene because the Monkees were literally like a TV show band that got big.
Yeah.
So
I love the Monkees.
kind of a bit meta there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
Hey, we're the Monkees.
And very
People say we'll monkey
Yeah.
around.
and a called shot as well because you can't like I don't know. I didn't enjoy this movie, it seems, as much as other folks did, but referencing a much better parody band in your mockumentary that includes a parody band or a mockumentary about a parody band, I feel like, boy, what an absolute baller move, you know? Like, oh yeah, the Monkees. We're gonna be like the Monkees. We're gonna be as good or better than the Monkees. And therefore we can reference them instead of hoping that people don't realize that they could be watching the Monkees right now.
I don't know if that was entirely the point, like, oh, we can be the Monkees. I think that, like, Spinal Tap is, like, obviously these are two very different things. If I recall, just from basic knowing from when my dad taught me about the Monkees, from what I recall, like, they were pretty much made to to jump on the bandwagon of, like, these British pop rock bands coming over,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. They're trying to be the second
TV
British invasion.
And Spinal Tap is more so like, well, what would you say? It's more so like, it's not like there is definitely a separation between the Monkees, who actually put out like a gold selling record, and Spinal Tap that was just kind of like a cult following kind of movie for quite some time, and still is, obviously.
Right.
They tried to do exactly the same thing a decade later. They had a move. They did it with a movie instead of a TV show.
But the Monkees was like a more serious thing.
Yeah.
This is like goofy, laugh at us mockumentary. The Monkees was like actually like a serious thing that actually got pretty big.
Yeah, they were great.
The show itself was a parody. It started out at the Spinal Tap level. Like it was a haha laugh at us kind of thing. Hey, we're the Monkees. It wasn't like a drama. It was a comedy.
Yeah,
Unless
it was
I'm
a comedy.
Am I talking my?
No,
Okay,
it was a
all
comedy.
right. I felt like I was so confused. I was like,
Yeah, no, it was it was a comedy, and most of the band members at first didn't play instruments. They actually had to learn
Yeah.
instruments as they started getting better and had to go on tour and stuff.
Yeah.
But there
I guess the
is-
difference is,
Yeah,
they got good.
Yeah.
Well, I think the other difference is like the Monkees being like a comedy show. It's rooted in a more serious, like, we're a serious comedy. That's what I meant. Like, we're a serious show about comedy, right? Whereas
Yeah.
Spinal Tap is made as like what I said. It's a hey, we're doing this as a parody. This is a mockumentary. Everything about this is a parody. I feel like the Monkees, even though it has that comedic swing to it, comedic angle to it, it is still, it wasn't like, it was like a written script, like a lot of Spinal Tap
Yeah.
is improv, a lot of it is stuff like that. So there still is a good divide between what the Monkees did and what Spinal Tap did.
Yeah. Well, Monkeys, it was like a sitcom, but like, about a band like the Beatles. And then they actually people like
Spinal-
them. Spinal Tap is kind
Spinal
of
Tap
is about a
is
a mockumentary about a band, kind of like the Beatles.
that's yeah.
Um,
There are definitely differences, though. I think the differences are borne out through time, though. You like people were bored of the Monkees in 1984, right? And like
Any
that
sane
sort of
person would be
wholesome
bored of them by
family.
then.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. Um, huh. I don't. I wonder what holds up better, because like we quote Spinal Tap, we don't really quote the Monkees.
I think
We don't quote
No,
a
but
lot of
they're
Spinal
they're
Tap, for
popular
the record.
enough. If a song comes on, you're like, oh yeah,
yeah,
like you at least know the song.
that is a
yeah.
great
The
point.
TV show, the TV show was just an average sitcom. Like you don't remember,
Yeah,
it's not the sitcoms from that time or slightly before that time. That you remember are the metaphor for beating the wife. Bam,
Much
zoom
like-
to the
much
moon.
like Spinal Tap.
Yeah. But yeah, like I mean, I can't. There's a few bits of like I Love Lucy. Like I'm like, oh yeah, that's from I Love Lucy, but nothing quotable in it.
right. Yeah,
Yeah, these are like two different sides of a coin here, because on one side, the
Yeah.
Monkees, their show is not memorable enough to have people like totally quoting it and like
Yeah, but
whatever.
their
But their
songs
music were really
Yeah.
it was really catchy, because it was obviously it was parodying the Beatles, right? And Spinal Tap, like the music that they make, whether it be serious or not memorable at all. Like obviously there's some
Very
fun
bad.
hooks in there, but not great. But it's the movie itself that is like the thing that is super memorable, and the music is just a part of that whole experience.
yeah.
I also have trouble sort of like, maybe this is just because I don't have familiarity with the show, but to me the Monkees are a unit, whereas this is Spinal Tap has actual characters, right? And some of the characters do have interesting arcs. Not they never become good people, that's for sure. But there is definitely like there's a change of a change on display.
Which might have been thrown out the window when they went to Japan.
Yeah.
Which is funny.
Yeah.
I was looking at it, and I think there is actually 2 other movies about Spinal Tap, but obviously they never went as big as the original here.
There are.
I thought that the ending with them going to Japan was really, really pretty dark.
So we have the
maybe-
return of Spinal Tap in '92, and then Spinal Tap: The Final Tour in '94.
Were they all done like by the same people and like?
Rob Reiner. Yep, all of them. Rob Reiner. And of course, pretty much the same cast. A little bit shorter though, because I mean, it looks like the first movie had the biggest budget, which obviously isn't saying a lot, all things considered,
Yeah.
but
No, not at all.
definitely looks like the sequels had much less going on, especially the final one, which only has 4 actors listed. It was
Wow.
only 21 minutes though, so I guess it's more of a short thing.
Okay.
Of course, I've never seen them, so I can't really comment on any of that, but that's what it seems like to me.
They come in and play the hits.
Yeah,
They Spinal Tap themselves.
like, hey, here's the one song that is good enough to get on the radio, and let's leave. But going back to like the budget thing, obviously you can tell it like they used the same stage a couple times. But I mean, I don't know how big the budget actually was. I don't know if someone wants to check that out real quick. But for what it was, I felt like there were some parts that actually were, I mean, pretty well, pretty whatchamacall, like
High production value.
yeah, kind of high production. Like with this
Yeah.
little Stonehenge model, like that was a really high detail Stonehenge model. And they actually had like the cocoons that they came out of. Like that stuff probably wasn't cheap, but it also probably ate up a lot of the budget.
The budget was $2 million, and they made 4.7 in the box office.
Hey, a net profit.
Yeah.
2 million adjusted for inflation. or was that like just
That's just what I saw
Just what you saw.
pop
Ah,
up.
still 2 million ain't a lot of money for a
As
movie.
films go.
Whether with inflation or not, it's still not a lot of money. But it's still impressive, like how many, all the outfits. You got all the like the like different
Most
lights
of
and
that
stuff going
budget-
on.
Most of that budget was to fill that guitar room.
Probably.
Yeah.
Well, also like they have like the double bass guitar, which is a parody in itself, because like obviously nowadays like people kind of they made it a reality, but back then I don't think it was a real thing to have a double bass guitar. Like obviously a double neck guitar, but the double bass was it showed up for one shot, and I wonder if maybe it like broke or something during production, and they were like, well, luckily we had it for the opening.
Did y'all have a favorite character?
Honestly, hold on. I did. I'm just really bad with names. Give me 2 seconds.
Well, I like the bass player. I thought he was the most grounded and realist guy in the entire group.
Yeah,
The
he
guy
really
who's
was, though.
He's the guy I thought was Ben Stiller.
Oh, I can see it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fair.
I think that is guest. No, I never.
I thought
can
that was
tell-
Derek Smalls.
Oh, maybe. I can never.
Or well,
tell.
his name is Harry.
The only time
Time I know it's Guest is in Princess Bride, when he plays the six-fingered man. But he's wearing a wig and stuff, so I can't. I'm like, I don't know what you look like normally.
I liked the
love-
David guy, played by Michael McKean. I just like Michael McKean as an actor.
King is great. Yeah.
Yeah. So
There's a scene where after after Nigel had left, where David's sitting there trying to come up with a set list for the next show, and he realizes that like every single one of his songs is actually Nigel's.
Mhm.
Like, he's like, we've got a 10-minute set. Like we could do the jazz. We could do the jazz solo. Nobody's gonna sit there and listen to 20 minutes of a live jazz solo. It was kind of funny. I also liked the bass player. It's just he was underplayed. It felt like, where it was like, can I ask a practical question? Are we doing Stonehenge tomorrow? It was just
Yeah.
a very good moment.
Right.
the Stonehenge scene killed me. I laughed really hard.
Yeah, I enjoyed it too. Yeah, that line, one of the best line deliveries in the whole movie is him going, "Are we playing Stonehenge tomorrow?" Because like they just went through this whole argument, and like he's kind of being like, "Well, so are we doing it or?"
Well, and the argument was about like a bunch of egos bumping into each other, this abstract stuff, and the bass player, you can't really be a bass player and have a big ego, because the lead guitar player will just keep turning your amp down until your ego goes away.
Tom Petty and the
So-
Heartbreakers, baby.
Exactly. So the fact that he's like, okay, fine, all of this is going on, but what's the fucking set list, please? I did think that was very good. I liked Nigel, honestly. I did like just how clear it was that he was very much of a moron, and also how clear it was that he was a very bad person, and also how clear it was that he was the creative heart of the group. Like, he was the one who actually could do the music stuff.
Yeah.
Some people are dumb in a creative way. And he represented that for me, and I really liked that.
Which one was he?
He was the
I mix up the two guitarists.
The
I can't
blonde
remember which
one.
one's which.
Right?
Okay.
No, Nigel was the
Brown hair.
black-haired one. The one who didn't have his wife/girlfriend.
Okay. so
Okay, yeah, because
Brown.
he's the one you see at one
Who
point playing the piano, and he's actually playing it really well.
Yeah. But he's also the same guy
Yeah,
who
yeah.
botched the Beethoven-inspired solo, though.
Well, yes, yeah.
So maybe
He
his
was.
passion is piano playing, and he just switched over to guitar because like that was like the popular thing was to play guitar instead of piano.
So the solo scene I thought was interesting because you are right that it sounded bad, but he was trying to play 3 guitars, one with his hands, one with his foot, and one with like a violin. And I was like,
Obviously,
that
by
is
the time
That
it-
was just goofing.
well, yeah, by the
Yeah.
time he gets to that, you can't really take it seriously. But starting off, when he's just playing the single guitar, it didn't sound good. But once you start layering things on, like obviously it's gonna sound worse when he's rubbing a violin against his guitar.
that's what I mean about like stupid and creative. Because like nobody intelligent would ever grab a violin and rub it against their guitar.
Right.
And what if it had sounded incredible? You know?
Hey, yeah. Got a new genre of music.
It didn't.
Mm.
Yeah, it didn't. But what if it did?
That's
Even
the big
a
what
blind
if.
squirrel finds. Yeah, blind squirrel finds a nut twice a day, and I think that's what Nigel kind of represented for me, at least a little bit. It's just this, yeah. He was also the one who, again, twice there were 2 jokes that mirrored each other. One at the start of the mockumentary, and one at the end, where they were like, he was like, "It's not sexist," and then he went into detail onto exactly like, yes, it was actually sexist, and then it was like, we're not a racist band, and then he kind of went into detail about how the band was actually a little bit racist, which wasn't explored really. Sort of each one of those was a one-off joke, but I do think that it was trying to talk about the state of the industry as a whole in those parts.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, it is a movie for comedic purposes, and I guess I just wasn't looking into it that deep, like the one-off jokes
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But I definitely see where you're coming from with some of the maybe wanting some more context or wanting them to expand on some of the more heavier problems plaguing the industry.
So earlier, before we started recording, we were talking about some of Sacha Baron Cohen's movies, right? And those movies, I think, can to me, number one, those are mockumentaries as well, but they represent the part of the mockumentary genre, to me at least, that goes that shows that you can have that comedy can enhance some kind of message. And I know it sounds weird to say that Borat has a message, but it absolutely does. It has a message about Eastern Europe and the way that it has been historically underrepresented in media, as well as just like kind of shat on the global scene. Spinal Tap felt like it gestured toward that a little bit, but you are correct in the end that they like a whole bunch of time, like throughout the whole movie, if they picked what's the joke here rather than what's the message here. And maybe I'm being unfair, but I was a touch disappointed about that in some parts,
I feel like any comedy movie will do that. It'll go lean towards what's the joke here versus what's the message here.
I think that it's a false dichotomy a lot of times. Sometimes the funniest thing is the message.
And if that's the case, that's what the joke will be.
Yes, but sometimes you like in a lot, I don't know about a lot, but in some mockumentaries they construct the entire conceit of it around the message rather than around the comedy, and it doesn't mean that it's
this was the
less
80s.
funny.
They weren't doing that yet.
Well, I wanted to bring up like a question, like to the people who've watched the other movies from these same people. Like, do they have more of a point? Do they have more of like a message in them, or is it more like Spinal Tap?
Like, you mean like Waiting for Guffman or like Best in Show?
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
'Cause
Oh,
I've
okay.
never seen
Um,
this.
I thought
I
you
mean,
meant the other Spinal Tap movies. I was like, I don't know.
No. Yeah, talking
No
about
one's seen them.
talking about the
Yemmy.
other movies that have been made by the same kind of group of people here.
Best in Show is like a quick description, synopsis, whatever. It just goes around interviewing dog owners that are going to this, dog show. Yeah. And you get to learn about them and their dogs and like the it's more of a movie type mockumentary. Like you get to find out who wins and like why. But the way that it's set up is almost exactly like Spinal Tap. Like you get to kind of go like get their backstory a little bit, and kind of go through their lives, and it's hilarious. I want to watch that movie so bad right now. I love that movie so much.
So you would say
but-
that they refined like their writing and stuff like that. Their
Oh, fantastic!
They're directing.
Honestly, yeah. It's really good.
My problem with these movies is like as I'm watching them, I'm always just like, yeah, that was a thing I watched. And then it's talking about it later, we're like, well, okay, well, that was funny. Like I didn't see it the first time. Well, like while I was watching it, but now talking about it is what makes it funny, or makes you go, oh yeah, that. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you have to watch it a second time, and you'll notice those things.
Yeah.
But like even this movie, like there was a few times I was watching, like, okay, yeah, I can see why this is a cult classic. I'm not seeing it. I don't care for it too much. And then talking about things like, okay, yeah, I guess I could see how that'd be funny. Okay, yeah, okay, that was all right.
Maybe this movie would have been a lot more fun if we'd all watched it together.
Yeah.
well, I
And
mean,
it might be.
you would have heard me laughing through the entire thing.
Yeah.
So
That's good. And that's fine, to each their own. But yeah, for me, it's just it was a movie.
Usually I like to watch movies with more of a critical eye. Like even as recently as Benchwarmers. Even though I was genuinely, had some fun with the movie. It's one of those things that I like. I had to get out my critical lens and really unpack it. But with a movie like this, like for some reason when I watched it, it was more so just like a joy of watching it. Maybe it's a bit of a nostalgia thing because I did watch it when I was such at a young age, and seeing it now and like actually appreciating the jokes and getting a lot of the jokes and stuff like that. It definitely maybe it's more of a nostalgia thing. And I put the the magnifying glass away a little bit when I was watching it.
I feel like this is
That-
definitely a movie that, like,
It's definitely a movie. Thank you.
it's definitely
Yes.
a movie. Yeah,
It's a movie.
that would be
Roll
like
credits.
it'd be more like watching it with a group would be definitely better than just watching it alone.
Yeah, I guess a good example is like when I watched Kung Pao again, and I remember that conversation. Like I had to kind of edge people away from like being so maybe more serious about how we were talking about it. And I'm like, well, guys, it's a parody movie. It's about it's about parodying the over the top nature of that film industry. And I kind of feel the same way here, where it's like, okay, we got some really deep subjects here, but in the end, like this movie was made to be just like this, like it's a comedy pretty much. That's
Comedy, parody, mockumentary.
right.
thing.
It's poking fun at things that were happening, but it doesn't go deep enough because it is on the surface level just a comedy movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't want to fall into the trap of it's just a joke, bro. Though, like, there are like ways to examine parodies that like. So the criticism Spinal Tap is a bad band, therefore this is a bad movie, that doesn't hold up. But saying this movie really seems to not like women very much, even though they point to trying not to be sexist in some of the jokes. Like, I think that's a valid point.
I'm not saying that anything that you or anyone else has said is not valid.
No, I know that. I'm trying to provide a framework for also I watched this movie knowing that I would be coming onto a podcast to talk about it as well, right? And that naturally, in the same way that somebody who's watching it and getting some nostalgia out of it, I was absolutely being significantly more critical than I might have been, again, had we watched it in a group setting. If somebody does want to watch this movie, I 100% recommend grab some friends to do it with. It'll
Agreed.
be more enjoyable. Yeah. Yep. Are there any anything that we missed? Any parts of it that folks wanted to talk about? We talked about the costumes a little bit, but it sounded like we might have wanted to go a little bit further into it because the costumes were absolutely very good jokes.
Not only good jokes, but also pretty well designed.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're good.
Like,
I I have been to some rock concerts before, and I will say one thing about Spinal Tap's rock concerts. If I went to a Spinal Tap concert, I would have a lot of fun because it's very, very clear that like Queens of the Stone. I saw Queens of the Stone Age live once, and their gimmick was that the lead singer was barefoot. I would far rather watch a bass player struggle to get out of a clamshell than watch a dude wander around a stage barefoot. Like, that was good. That was funny. It was super cool. And then, like, an 18-inch tall Stonehenge with some little people dancing around it. Like, absolutely in bad taste, 100%. But far more effort in that show than I have seen in a lot of other shows. That's one thing about Spinal Tap is they did put in the effort, you know?
Yeah.
Giant skull was cool.
Their stages were pretty cool.
Yeah.
You definitely tell where the budget was mostly spent. It was on those cool practical effects that, or things in the background and foreground that spiced up the stage and made it look different because, as I already said, like it did seem like the same stage every time, just like maybe different angles. Kind of like how Monty Python had like one or two castles that they actually filmed at, even though they went to like 5 or 6 in the movie itself,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's only a model.
Funny thing is it wasn't a model. It was a real castle. Shouldn't. I don't know. It may have been.
No,
a
it
model.
was a real castle. At least
Okay.
I know for sure from the
At some
behind the
point,
scenes
yeah.
that at least one of them was a real castle.
Yeah. I don't know if that specific one was a model, though. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm not sure
In
either.
that scene. Are we ready for final thoughts?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so as well.
All right. I think so too.
Topos, I guess.
I concur.
Does Topos start us off here? I can't remember.
Oh,
for
yeah.
fan vote. All right.
Yeah.
It does.
This movie was a 2.5 for me. Wait, am I allowed to do halves?
Yeah.
Oh, all right. This movie was a 2.5. I thought that mostly it was it was very funny. There were a lot of pieces that were well done. And then there were some pieces of it that, to me at least, like got in a fight with each other. And I didn't know which one the movie was trying to really say. And that bothered me a little bit. It felt a touch unfocused, but not as part of the joke, if that makes sense. That being said, I think that if I had watched it with friends, we would be... Tay and I are likely going to be quoting this movie at each other for a little bit. And I think that in and of itself is beautiful.
Okay. Well, I really enjoyed my watch of it. I did end up like watching it on my phone because I didn't really have time last weekend to sit down and watch it, and I was pretty busy. So my viewing experience wasn't like my favorite ever, but that doesn't really factor in because I think that a lot of the movie overcame the smaller screen, I guess you could say. I
Movie
really
about the sound.
Well, I was playing it through my car speakers, so I got surround sound. I could literally hear the band behind me and in front of me. I guess probably could have watched it with more of a critical eye to it, but while I was watching it, I just was having an enjoyable time, and I was laughing at the jokes and smiling throughout, and maybe maybe the ending is a bit too quick. Like it kind of just wraps up and the guy explodes and then they're in Japan. But I didn't really mind it enough to decrease any points from my score. I just thought in general just a fun watch. I really, coming out of it, I didn't really have any criticism about it except for like the very very end. I just thought it was like a pretty believable while also being slightly obtuse, like this kind of believable documentary kind of thing going on. And I'm rambling now. I'm staying with my original score, and that's a 5 out of 5.
Wow. Yeah, I thought it was a funny movie about a band that was kind of falling apart. Well, falling apart in ways. A band, just it was just a funny overall. Like I just watched this movie. Yemi brought up the critical lens, but I just watched it as like my first time. This was my first time watching it. But I felt like right off the bat like a joking theme, so that's kind of how I watched it. I thought it was funny throughout. And I thought the music, but again, like I said, I'm not gonna criticize it for because I know they were kind of joking and all that. But as for the joke, like well, where was I going to go with this? Oh God. As for like
Don't
being
freak out.
sexist and all that, yeah, that's where I was going. As for it being sexist, yeah, it didn't age well, but I think you got to think of the time this movie came out. They really didn't care as much. But overall, I'm gonna give this movie a 3.5. Middle, it's an okay movie.
All right. Well, as I've said before, it was a movie. Um, we had this issue last week, I guess, with Onward, where it was just like, yeah, that was a movie.
Yeah.
It was fine. For Onward, it was fine. For this one, it was slightly less than fine, in my opinion. Like I didn't laugh at all. I don't think. Maybe part of that was because this was my first time watching it too, but I have friends who like they're part of the occult or the cult following of this movie and they love it and they quote it, and so it's like I had heard all the memorable moments beforehand, and so when they time to come up, they'd been built up so much for me that I was just like, oh, that was all that was. Okay. It's fine. Slightly less than fine. I don't know. I'm gonna agree with Topos here, though. I think I'm gonna give it a 2.5 out of 5. It was fine.
What?
It was fine. Um, for me, I really like this style of movie. I like mockumentaries, and I had seen it before. I've watched Best in Show more recently than this one, so like I knew what to expect and I was excited for it. No, the movie didn't age well, but also like that's a good thing. And the fact that like we've come a long way since then. So love to see that progress. Yeah, for me I was gonna give it a 3.5 out of 5. Actually, no, I'm gonna strike that. I'm gonna give it a 4. I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5. I thought it was funny and entertaining, and yeah, I really like those styles of movies.
I'd say Yemi's going to be a really an oddball out there. But Ray,
I'm still a point and a half or a point higher, so
A half. Yeah.
5.
Or yeah,
or
point. Yeah, you said 4.
3.5.
I mean, I kind of knew coming into this conversation that probably 50% of the podcast wasn't gonna be on board with the movie, but I had to stick to my guns. Because like when you're when I have a good experience when watching a movie, sometimes talking about it does like diminish it, but this time I was like, but I really like it.
That's fine. Talking about, like I said, for me,
We
talking
respect you
about it,
for it.
yeah,
Yeah,
talking
nothing
about
wrong
it
with
helped bring it up actually. So, which there's a few movies that's happened where I was like, okay, yeah, after talking about it, it was better. I know that's happened to Greedy as well. But yeah, it was just like I said. I think I definitely would have had a different viewing experience had I watched it with people. But watching by myself, I found myself bored. So
That's fair.
It's fair, but it confuses me a lot. Well, that's okay.
well, I mean, you've seen it before, right?
One
long
time
time
when I
ago.
was like 8 years old.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like I said, for me, I think part of it for me was just all the talk up from my friends who loved this movie, and then finally seeing it, going, "That was it." So yeah, that didn't help.
Yeah, we've seen it in plenty of different medias where people will hype something up and it falls flat on his face.
Yeah.
And
And part of it, I think, is the fact that this movie is a very specific kind of humor that is not necessarily everybody's bag, but when it hits hard.
Yeah.
So if you like this kind of thing, this is very much this kind of thing. If you're ambivalent about this kind of thing, then you're gonna be wondering what the fuss was about.
I couldn't have said it
I
any
can
better.
Yeah. And again,
Alright.
if you enjoy it, that's great. So, good on you.
Okay.
Glad that it exists.
Well, I guess the real question here is, Topos, is there another movie you want to recommend eventually down the road for us to put into the fan vote?
Oh man,
know
the
one,
problem
but-
is that I have like 3.
I know there was definitely one, but I think someone actually already suggested it.
Oh really? Somebody already
Uh,
called The Fifth Element?
Did someone?
Yeah.
Can't
That's on
remember.
the list. I'm not.
I don't think it was Fifth Element. I think it was something else.
I don't see Fifth Element on my list. I
Okay.
think Kenobi was originally going to suggest Fifth Element, but then he switched to Alien.
Okay. You should go for that, Topos, and it's one of your favorites. You've actually seen this movie.
It's the Fifth Element. Yeah. The Fifth Element is really great. If you folks ever feel like doing a string of kids animation movies, there's a couple of dark horses that I would like to throw in the ring, but maybe that's a theme for another time. The Fifth Element, Bruce Willis, Luc Besson, Gary Oldman, just an absolute banger of a movie all the way through and through, and I enjoy it and would love to come and talk about it. I promise I'll only talk about sexism a little bit.
I have it written down, so it'll be in the fan vote probably two times from now. So we'll see
Cool.
how it fares. I think
We'll
I think
see.
like an animation skit might be a fun one to do,
Yeah.
where we all just choose animated movies.
I definitely could be on board for that.
I'm
Yeah,
down.
maybe the next time around the horn, because this time around the horn,
Aha!
I already have a movie picked out, which we did discuss it a little while ago with Christmas coming around, the holidays coming around. I wanted to suggest a movie that was kind of like it's like one of those movies that's like, oh, is it a Christmas movie? It's based around Christmas, but is it Christmas?
Oh no.
Die
Oh
Hard?
gosh. Batman. No.
No, we already talked about it. I'm doing Gremlins from 1984.
Oh yeah, that's right. I love that.
Yes. Oh my god, I love that movie. Let's go.
Came out the same year as This Is Spinal Tap.
We'll see how they compare. So yeah, this is from 1984, directed by Joe Dante. Short synopsis is: when Billy Peltzer is given a strange but adorable pet named Gizmo for Christmas. He inadvertently breaks the 3 important rules for caring for a Mogwai, right? Mogwai?
Mogwai.
Mogwai. And unleashes a horde of mischievous gremlins on a small town. And this stars Zach
Usually
Gilligan.
when you
Yes.
usually when you break the 3 rules on on caring for a Christmas pet, they just die.
Yeah.
This time, they kill everyone else.
Yeah, this time they go psycho.
Hell yeah.
So yeah, you can get this on Amazon. You can rent it on Amazon. I'm pretty sure it's on all the other major places like YouTube and Apple TV, stuff like that. So it shouldn't be too hard to find. One of the things that I like to mention when I talk about Gremlins is the fact that my sister was very afraid of this movie, but which inadvertently made me really afraid of watching it. But when I watched it myself when I was like 13, I was like, no, this is awesome. So I'm excited to rewatch it.
Hell yeah.
Sweet.
Me too. I think I watched it
There's
recently.
probably a pretty big.
I don't think
I've
seen
never
it.
seen Gremlins.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen it.
It's fantastic.
Maybe you'll have to watch it with me, Topos.
Yeah,
I'm
date
gonna
Be on
say
the
me too.
podcast
I'll come
and-
over and watch it.
So yeah, if you don't want to be spoiled or if you want to join the conversation about Gremlins from 1984, make sure you watch that before the next episode airs in 2 weeks. We'll reconvene and discuss the movie as we do. What we like to do now at the end of the podcast is a small recommendation, or maybe a small anti-recommendation, as I did last time. Does anyone have any small recommendations? Just little things like, hey, you should check this out if you're interested in this.
I had one, but I can't remember it now.
Do
I-
restaurants count?
Sure.
If it's something that can be like everyone can enjoy, not just Ohioans.
No, I'm pretty sure this is in a lot of places around the U.S. But this was
Our UK
this past
listeners
weekend.
are out of luck.
Huh?
Our UK listeners are out of luck.
I'm so sorry. I mean, they probably have this type. Let me explain. Let me explain.
Go for it. Sorry.
This past weekend, it's all right. I'll fight you later. This past weekend was mine and my boyfriend's 1-year anniversary, and so we decided to go to this place called Texas de Brazil. Thank you. Called Texas de Brazil, and all it's just a Brazilian steakhouse, and these men walk around with meat on swords.
Okay.
Yes, I've been there.
I think
Oh
I've seen
my
a TikTok
god.
about that. I think I was scared and I said never see again.
Are the
It was
men
amazing.
Very good. Very, very good.
Are the men wearing like lots of clothes or not very many clothes?
Yeah,
or...
they all wearing kilts or something?
Oh, they're completely nude. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh.
they,
Actually, the swords are just their
Right.
penises.
Kidding?
Yeah.
it's a pork sword, is what it is. No, they are like dressed in a specific type of uniform that requires like tight blue shirts and scarves. Don't know if that's like a Brazil culture thing or if that's just they're very flamboyant in their attire. Not positive, but yeah, it was amazing. I tried filet mignon for the first time and lamb, which was gross, and it was fantastic. I loved it.
Yeah, lamb's a bit
Yeah.
too salty for me.
It's weirdly like briny. I don't know. It was weird.
Yeah. Well, I can confirm they do have those in other locations. I know we have one here in Vegas. And I know in Salt Lake, I don't know if they have that specific restaurant, but they have one similar called Rodizio's.
Nice.
Same basic thing.
Yeah.
Brazilian steakhouse with swords and whatnot. Grilled pineapple, usually.
Oh, we had fried bananas.
Ooh.
It was a weird texture thing, but like it wasn't bad.
Hey, have
I
you
feel
been
like
to
we
that
would
restaurant where
start
they're
it.
like complete assholes to you? Isn't that in LA? Or is that
You're
Some-
thinking of like the Heart
here-
Attack Grill or something like that?
I've
Where
been to
they're
the Heart
just, like,
Attack Grill.
yeah, like
That
they
one they're
write
not
hats
mean
on
to
you
you.
or write something on your hat and like are just assholes to
I
you
think,
all
I
the
think
time.
you're
Yeah, I know
thinking
the
of,
restaurant you're talking about. I think we have one here, but I don't know.
There's one
yeah,
at like
isn't it
Myrtle
called
Beach.
like
Isn't it
Taco
Dick's
Bell?
or
Taco Bell.
yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Taco Bell.
Taco Bell, yeah.
I'm pretty sure we have one here.
Chipotle on a weeknight? No.
No, I know what you're talking about. We might have one here, or it might be like in LA. I don't remember. I've never been, but I have been to the Heart Attack Grill, and went there for a friend's birthday. I didn't actually eat anything, but watching what they ate, I was just like, I'm glad if I ate anything here, yeah, I would have a heart attack. They put pads of butter on everything, even their milkshakes.
Yeah.
Ew.
I've seen
Yeah.
some Nikocado avocado videos, and it doesn't even look appetizing.
No, it doesn't. Like,
It
just
doesn't
watching them,
sound appetizing.
I was just like, I'm glad I didn't get anything because
We'll
Oh my
we'll
God.
put that in the anti recommend category.
so pro yes, go to a Texas Brazilian meat place. No, don't go to Heart Attack Grill.
Well, Greedy
Noted.
and I might have a small recommendation. Greedy,
Yeah,
do you
I
want
was
to
actually
take it
about
away?
to. Yeah, if and well, I'll let him take the thunder what we did yesterday, but if
Ooh.
there's any like Christmas movies you guys want to watch on the big screen, I don't know if this is worldwide, but I know a lot of movie theaters are bringing some classic to the big screen. Me and Yemmy yesterday, I'll let you take over. Yemmy, go ahead.
Oh, we went to go see the 25th anniversary of Saving Private Ryan in theaters, and
And it was awesome.
yeah, it was great. It was like the Ultra HD version or whatever it's called, and there was like some behind the scenes footage that played beforehand where they talked about how the actors actually went to like a boot camp for a whole week, and it was really interesting, that part. And then the movie itself is like really good. I mean, obviously there's some minor criticisms about it as any movie, but Saving Private Ryan is one of the more realistic depictions of at least World War II. Even though there's some things they get wrong, like in the technical side of things, but yeah, it's one of those more brutal and more realistic depictions of like war. It's not glorified in a way like like a lot of other movies do it. So definitely would recommend going and watching that if you haven't. If you like
And like I
war,
said, I
war
get,
movies.
and I guess, like I said, I guess it must be Yummy said yesterday. I guess there's not many good Christmas movies coming out this year, but I know they're bringing some classics back on the big screen. So
Yeah, like
definitely
you can
keep an eye
see
out.
you can see The Grinch, and of course A Christmas Story. So there's a lot of stuff coming back, but the main recommendation for me is Saving Private Ryan.
And they're real
Right.
quick. It's only like 2 days only for each movie. So it's weird.
At least in our area, for some reason.
Yeah.
Sounds like a cute date though.
Yeah, it was. It was chaperoned by my dad.
Yeah.
Aww. Oh, so I'm guessing there's no like kisses, no holding hands.
Right.
No, not on. No.
Damn.
Maybe
Yeah.
next time.
Yeah,
Maybe
let's smooch during the D-Day scene where the guy's getting his arm blown off.
Yeah. During the loud
why wouldn't
bangs,
you?
that's when we did it. During the loud bangs sounds, the gunfire.
But yeah,
You know.
I think that a lot of what Saving Private Ryan does well is like showing the human side of a war. Like it's not just limbs and people being blown up. It's like there's actual like it's more of a realistic depiction than most movies that you would see based on war, which is of course why it got so many Oscar nominations and won so many awards. Not only that, but I think the Oscars and the Academy just love war movies in general.
Seriously.
But it is one of those movies that like it deserves a lot, if not all, of the nominations and awards that it was nominated for. Like it's one of those movies where it's like, okay, this is definitely like the like where we should strive to be for war movies. Something that's grounded in reality, something that has a good story around it, something that's historically accurate for the most part, and just something that doesn't depict war as like some fantasy cartoony thing, you know, like a lot of video games do and stuff nowadays. Like it actually it's brutal, and it's supposed to be shocking, and it's supposed to have a lot of heart as well. With like the characters and like the whole squad mechanic of a group of infantrymen during World War II. And like, of course, Saving Private Ryan,
There's a quote.
it's inspired a lot of things, including the Medal of Honor series. Like that wouldn't have started if it wasn't for Saving Private Ryan.
So you slag off modern video games in one sentence and then say that they were inspired by Saving Private Ryan in the next. Not that there's a quote by a World War II author. I think it was Kurt Vonnegut, but I'm not sure. Who said the most realistic war movie would have bullets flying through the screen and kill some of the audience. And I was like, huh, that one's interesting. I'm being unfair to Saving Private Ryan. I haven't seen it, and I do hear that it's really good. I just like, man, the war movies. It's hard not to glorify war.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is very hard to like. I mean, I mentioned Medal of Honor just because like it was inspired. Like Medal of Honor wouldn't have started without Saving Private Ryan being there and inspiring the people who developed that game. Like it's a movie that inspired a lot, and it's a movie that a lot of other media will try to reach the height of. And I don't think that it's 100% like non-glorifying, but it does enough, and it shows enough, and it has enough hard-hitting points about war and PTSD, and these people being in a squad unit and fighting and dying, and it's like, oh, I'm just a mechanic, I'm just a teacher, I'm like, these are just normal people going into war and being forced into impossible situations, and I think they convey that much better than. I mean, I can't really think of another war movie off the top of my head that does a bad job. Maybe Fury, I guess. Fury comes to mind, but yeah, it's just a movie that it definitely raises the bar. Like think of Black Hawk, exactly, Black Hawk Down. Like there's a whole section where the guy's like shooting like thousands of terrorists or whoever, and it's like, wow. I think
Jacket, another one.
Yeah, I kind of commend Full Metal Jacket for a couple things, but those movies that tried but didn't get there, walked so that Saving Private could run and learn from their mistakes and build off of it. And I think the one thing that a lot of war movies get wrong is just the fact that like, you just got tons of people shooting at each other, and they have unlimited ammo, and there's really no strategy to it. They're just kind of rushing in and blah, 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 blah. But this, like, actually, Steven Spielberg and the cast and crew, like, they really did their research, and they really made sure to make it as authentic as they could, while also keeping it somewhat entertaining throughout the whole thing, Like, they still have to have, like, the action and, maybe some some maybe goofier moments, just to keep it a little bit more lighthearted. Because in the end, it is just a squad of like young men, joking around at times. So, they try to keep it there.
I sounded way meaner than I meant to, which I realized halfway through when I was talking about bringing Vonnegut into it. So I have heard that Saving Private Ryan is a really good movie and a good depiction and a good warning of what war is. It's war movies are rough. I'm glad that you're here to champion the cause of that little known film, Saving Private Ryan.
yeah, that strain, that very underground.
I'm sorry, Yemmy. That. So
I mean, you call it a small I call it a small recommendation, but it's like who hasn't? I mean, I think there's less people who haven't seen the movie than who have at this point. So it's like, of course, everyone knows that Saving Private Ryan is a good movie. Anyone who says otherwise, I don't know exactly what the reasons would be. But if
you can go and see it in theaters, though, I'm sure that it's a like pushing people towards that is a good thing.
Yeah, the full surround sound, the big screen, like it's definitely definitely an experience that I definitely wanted to have, and I'm glad that it came back to theaters for the few days that it did.
Great experience.
All right. Well, that kind of turned into like a full-on review.
I'm about to say, like, that's
and I give it a 5 out of 5.
No, save. That sounds like we need to start up another podcast. I know you have so many, Yemmy, but we gotta do it. And that
Yes.
one is just recommending things.
Yeah, this is small
Yeah,
recommendations.
talking about stuff that we like. We could call it wonderful.
Oh yeah.
Oh wait, no,
Correct.
shoot,
That's already a
that one's
podcast.
taken.
All right, I think it's time to wrap it up here. It's almost 10:30 our time.
I'm exhausted.
Does anyone else have anything they would like to say before we end the show?
No, let's just end it.
Of course, thank you,
Good.
Top.
Thanks for
Yeah.
coming in.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Topos, for coming on the show again. Always a pleasure to have you on. Deep conversation as usual.
Is it?
Yes.
Oh my
it is.
god! Every time at the end, I'm always like, "Oh shoot, did I go too far?" But I am really glad that you folks keep inviting me back. I do appreciate it. Ray,
night-
it was absolutely phenomenal to hear your perspective on things, and I am glad, for the record, that I am no longer to make fun of the four guys talking about movies podcast. So
It was great to meet you.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you do bring out the more hard-hitting topics, it's something that we don't usually cover as harsh as we do normally. So I think it's a nice new perspective being brought in when you're on the show with the, really talking about the deep stuff.
that's good. That's good. It's a refreshing change of pace. So that, yeah, yep. Well, yeah, that's it. What's our sign off? How do we do this?
Well, this has been another episode of Film Freaks with a Z. I'm Yemmy the Ferret, and I've been here with...
Brady Waffles.
Taymation.
Great positivity.
And Topos!
Thank you for listening. Have a good Thanksgiving. Well, I guess Thanksgiving's going to be over by the time this comes out. I hope you had a good Thanksgiving. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays!
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.